For 6 years, this suitcase was my home. Everything I owned fit inside of here. Just 2 pairs of shoes, some family photos, and the pants I'm wearing right now. 1 pair of pants. I spent most of my 20s as a digital nomad, meaning I hopped around the world working online and living full-time out of Airbnbs, hotels with no home address. Summer might mean Europe, winter might mean Africa, Asia, Latin America. For Thanksgiving, I usually went back home to mom in Tennessee, but then it was back on the road. I was completely free, no strings attached. Does that sound fun to anybody, this lifestyle? Yeah? Well, buckle up. Moving that much is pure chaos. You're a stranger everywhere you go. And you start measuring life not in seasons or months, but in places. Soon, those of us who raise our hands will be saying, remember that deal we made on top of Mount Kilimanjaro? Before Chernobyl, but after the trip to Transylvania, the one where we bribed the witch. But didn't we all have big dreams when we were young? For me, it was traveling. And I know that some of you out there are still waiting to be swept up at midnight on a train heading to the North Pole with a bunch of strangers. And I want you to know that that thirst to explore isn't childish. It's one of the oldest things about humanity. It's what made our brains big. That need to remember all the rivers and the trails that take you all the way to Mordor and home again. We don't have much time together today, so here's what I want you to remember. You are born to explore. And the most important part about your journeys is the human connections you'll make along the way. Let's travel back in time a bit so you can see how I got here, and maybe you'll see a bit of yourself in my story. I grew up on a small mountain in Tennessee, but maybe as a white guy at Stanford, you picture something like this. But again, growing up, home looked a lot more like this. I actually didn't fly on a plane until I was 19. I didn't fly out of the country at all until I was 24. But I always had this dream to get out, and I loved to read. So I'd hit the library every week and go home and curl up in my favorite rocking chair with a glass of sweet tea and travel with my imagination. My favorite books were the Magic Tree House series. Afternoon on the Amazon, Pirates Past Noon, Dingoes at Dinner Time. I wanted to be on Zach's Zebra Safari. So I was confused and frustrated why our family trips always spent the same long drive to my grandparents' farm in South Georgia. I remember staring out the window of my dad's old SUV, watching Appalachian mountains blend into cotton fields, and wondering, is this the farthest I'll ever go? But I loved getting to my grandparents' farm. They had donkeys and chickens, and there were lightning bugs, and it was just this warm, humid, beautiful place. My grandpa would set out a bowl of boiled peanuts, and he'd put me on his lap and say, Zachary, you ready for my latest yarn? He'd read me stories about a little boy who sailed across the world in a hot air balloon, discovering hidden societies and making fantastical friends. I remember feeling so inspired, so ready to grow up, but also trapped and small. I wondered, will I ever get out of the South, or is that just something they do in the books? I think we all had that hero like my grandpa when we were growing up, who made you think the world is small enough to do Afternoon on the Amazon and Dingoes at Dinner Time all in the same day. But what happens to that feeling when we grow up? My grandpa lit a fire in me to explore, but I didn't know where to start. I grew up, and while my friends were organizing their lives around jobs and cities, I just wanted to be free. I still wanted to get out. It was 2016, and I had a really cushy job, but I felt this restless itch inside of me to do something more. So, against the better advice of lots of very smart friends, I quit that comfortable job and joined a totally remote startup. And I flew to Croatia to meet a group of 50 strangers who would quickly become my family. I was joining a digital nomad program called Remote Year, where you live in a new country each month for a whole year, working abroad for different companies. These Remote Year people were my spirit animals. it was such a diverse crew. We had people from Italy, South Africa, Romania, Brazil, Mexico. And we just spent time in Hanoi, Marrakesh, Prague, working in different apartments together, working in co-working spaces, exploring and falling in love with each other and just having such a great time. And their jobs, remote work was so weird back in 2016. We had crematorium designers, we had shampoo entrepreneurs, corporate lawyers. We even had one guy who claimed he owned 20 vending machines and helped the army track down crashed drones, but nobody really believed him. I was the third youngest in this group of 50 people. So I felt so inspired and so just motivated by these fiercely independent and successful nomads, but I felt really insecure too. A part of me was wondering, did I make a mistake in taking this risk and doing this lifestyle? Did I maybe mess up my future and my career? 7 months go by on remote year, and now we're in Osaka, Japan, dressed as Pokemon trainers. It's Halloween, and the streets are packed with drunk Japanese people giggling in their anime outfits. And my whole remote year crew is there with me. The Pokeballs are flying. And I needed a break, so I ducked into a cocktail bar with my friend Ashima. And over whiskey sour, she taught me my first big lesson in being a digital nomad. I said, Ashima, I really love this lifestyle. I love being nomadic, but I feel like I might be risking my future. I might be risking my career. What do you think? She looked at me through her Pikachu outfit, and she said, Zach, everything worth doing in life is a risk. Risk is just excitement plus fear. And I choose to focus on the exciting parts. And Zach, you should too. Ashima's words stuck with me. Growing up, I was taught to follow the normal path, study hard, move to the city, make your boss happy, maybe farmer's market on Sundays. But deep down was a motivation system built on fear. Fear that if I left the South, I'd be abandoning my family and my values. Fear that if I quit that comfortable job, I might be wrecking my whole career. Fear that I might never find a life partner who shared my sense of adventure. My remote year friends like Ashima changed me. Connecting with them showed me that there is no singular path in life. You have to choose the things that give you energy, not run towards the things that take away your fears. Maybe becoming a global citizen will give you energy too. Or maybe it's getting a master's degree or doing a TED Talk. Whatever it is, you need to run towards those exciting and scary parts about life, because if you don't, life will pass you by. 6 years go by after remote year. I've traveled to 60 countries now, and I'm a grizzled veteran digital nomad. I even had started my own fully remote company called Galactic Fed, a marketing business, and I had 150 employees around the world who shared my sense of adventure and travel. But deep down, I still felt this anxiety pulling at me with every day, because you see, in just a few months, I would be leaving this lifestyle behind to go to grad school at Stanford. And I knew that leaving this exciting bit of my life and returning to normal life meant that I needed to take advantage of the opportunity while I had it and get off the beaten path one last time for some big, exciting trip. I wanted to become one of those explorers for my grandfather's books. I was sitting on a safari truck in the Serengeti with my business partner, Irina, when she turned to me and said, Zach, what about the Congo? I'd never been to the Congo. I didn't know anyone who'd been there. And unfortunately, I'd only heard some bad parts about it. I'd heard about civil wars, lawless regions, dangers. But I've been fascinated about this part of the world since I read a book about it when I was young. And I always wondered, what would the people be there like? Was there anything I could learn from them? Was there anything I could offer in return? After days of research, we set our sights on an epic quest. We would travel up the Congo River in search of Lac Tele, the most remote lake in the world. This lake sits in the middle of the world's largest black water swamp in a jungle the size of Greece, and it was formed when an ancient meteorite hit that jungle, straddling the heart of Africa. Many tribes that live around this lake believe that there's this ancient species of dinosaur called the Mokele Mobembe that lives in Lac Tele and kills everybody who enters. If I made it to this lake, I would be one of the first few dozen outsiders in recorded history, and the very first from the southeast United States. I felt terrified for what lay ahead with this. It would be weeks, maybe months, and I didn't know what this would look like, but I knew this was my chance to reconnect with those stories from my grandfather. This was my chance to join that origin of the magic treehouse stories, maybe crocodiles in the Congo or dinosaurs in the lake. That first night, as our guide helped us into the thin wooden boat, I imagined myself as a sort of alien visitor, put on this planet with do not interfere orders. You see, the Congo has a history of terrors committed by people who look a bit like me. And I wanted to make sure that I was there to listen, to learn, not to preach. The going was tough. We didn't pack very well, and I had just some Snickers bars and maybe a bowl of pasta every once in a while. And I quickly lost 20 pounds, cutting holes in my belt to keep my pants on. Again, the same pants I'm wearing today. We faced angry hippos, flooding rapids, forest fires in our way to this dinosaur lake. But each night, like magic, just as we needed it, just as the sun was setting, a village would appear on the horizon with a place to sleep. After a bath in the river, I'd hang out on the riverbank with the local kids, and we'd play soccer or laugh together. And I remember the most memorable kid I met was this 11-year-old boy named Patu. He followed me around with his shy white smile. And I asked our translator, could you ask Patu what his dreams are for the future? And Patu looked at me as he spoke. And our translator said, his greatest wish is to travel the world. He wants to live in America with you, Zach. He wants to learn medicine so he can go home and help his village, but he's trapped in this place. He's forbidden from leaving. He's strictly not allowed to leave by the chiefs of this village. Hearing this gutted me in a way. I felt so connected with this little kid, this boy with a dream to explore. I had felt that way myself when I was his age, but at that time, I just remember feeling so frustrated. Remember by these long road trips down to South Georgia, I felt like I would never get out. I'd never see anything. But I'd already traveled so much further than Patu might ever in his life, and that did not feel fair. I was still that alien with the do not interfere orders, but I was wondering, is there something I could do to help? Well, we carried on through the jungle, macheting through rainstorms and bribing crooked cops. And finally, we found ourselves at the last lake, the gateway to this fabled lost village, lost lake. And I remember it was so hot in this place. I'd forgotten all of my life before. I was just sitting under a tree resting when an old man walked up and said hello. And keep in mind, I had not heard much English at all in weeks. So I sprung up and I was like, hello, who are you? Why are you here? We started chatting for half an hour, then an hour. And I got my guard down, and I felt comfortable enough to propose this idea I had when I met Patu. I said, would you ever send your children abroad so they could learn to work online? I knew I'd said something wrong immediately. He leaned down on the spear he had, and he said, you come to my village to take my children away? I said, no, I'm so sorry. I just thought maybe this could bring you money in medicine, and it could bring teachers to help your village. He flared his nostrils, and he said, I have been to Kinshasa, referring to the capital of the DRC. He said, I've seen the crime and the anger these changes bring. We do not want any of that here. We are proud of who we are. And he walked away. I woke up the next morning to shouting all around me. And I called over our translator. I said, what's going on? And he said, Zach, who did you speak with yesterday? What did you say? And I explained to him, and he said, you've angered one of the chiefs in this village. That's who you were speaking with. He's forbidden us from going on to the lake. We have to turn around now. We can't go any further. I remember I just felt like someone had poured ice water on my head. People were shouting all around me, and then they moved off into the forest a bit. And I just felt so sad and misunderstood. I was days away from this lake. I traveled so far, but I couldn't go anymore. I felt like the part of the book, of the story, where the alien realizes he's gone too far, and now he has to pack up and go home. Twilight began to set, and I was still on that log. I had packed up my backpack by now, and the chiefs and everyone else reappeared, and they started speaking to me, and I looked to our translator for assistance, and he seemed surprised, and he said, they asked, will you respect their customs and traditions? I said, well, yeah, of course. And he said, if you can do this, they've agreed to forgive you, and you can carry on to the lake. And I popped up and I said, please tell them I'm sorry. Please tell them thank you. I just wanted to help. On April 9th, 2022, I became the first person from the southeastern United States to reach Lac Tele, the most remote lake in the entire world. I hate to disappoint you. I did not find the Mokele Bobembe dinosaur. Looked all around the big lake. Maybe it was asleep. But I did learn a priceless lesson in the Congo, which was the value of curiosity. Has anyone ever tried to connect with someone from a different culture, but given up because you didn't know what to say, or maybe you were afraid of being canceled? I went to the Congo with good intentions, but my intentions were useless without first doing the groundwork and learning to understand people in their own contexts. Being a good global citizen means searching for those connective tissues that bind your story to everyone else and being willing to change your mind. The hardest part is realizing that sometimes your good intentions might hurt other people. But those are the rawest and the realest moments to build cultural bridges, when the tide goes all the way out and all your differences are laid bare. We're all aliens to each other, but deep down our DNA is the same. As for Patu, that young boy I met, I hope so much to see him out in the world one day. I hope to connect with him online. But I can't do that for him. It'll take a generational change within his own culture, and that is their choice to make, not mine. On the plane to Stanford to start grad school, to end this nomadic lifestyle, I reflected on how could I carry these lessons forward as I reintegrated back into normal life. How can a nomad be worldly without his wings? I thought it over a bit and scribbled these notes on an airline napkin. I realized I never needed to live out of this suitcase for 6 years and travel up the Congo River just to be a good cultural connector, just to connect with people different from me. I realized if I just brought that mindset you have when you're abroad, that curiosity, into my own backyard, that I could discover a whole world out here waiting for me. When I got to California, I started by attending every cultural event I could find. I went to Chinese New Year with my friend Ian, and he taught me that you wear red to fend off an ancient dragon who's afraid of that color. I went to a Native American powwow, and I sat cross-legged in the grass, feeling a deep knot of respect in my stomach for the earliest people who lived on this land. I loaded up on classes with international themes. I learned why it's hard for India to open a car factory, and what 7-Eleven does to keep their sushi fresh in Japan. I even found a way to share my own cultural heritage by starting All Y'all, Stanford's first club for the American South. We've thrown barbecue parties and Southern networking events, and I've been really proud to showcase the best parts of where I grew up. From all this, I realized I never needed to leave my own backyard to be a good global citizen, and neither do you. Your list will probably look different than mine. Maybe you'll host a foreign exchange student, or maybe you'll spend a weekend learning the history of your hometown. Whatever it is, I promise, it'll make the world feel a lot bigger and your problems a lot smaller. Now, remember what I said at the very beginning. Our brains grew large because of humanity's wonderful, ridiculous drive to wander. Our need to map and remember new places. We are all explorers, called from deep within our genes. The world out there is waiting for you to discover, and it is your story to write and your dinosaurs to discover. I hope to see you out on the road someday, either in our own backyard here together, or maybe somewhere far away. Wherever your journeys take you, I hope you are well. Thank you.